Hello and welcome back to the Franchise Growth Podcast. My name is Belle, Director of Marketing here at AC Inc. And I'm here today with a brand new guest to the show. Welcome, Jenna.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here.
Applause. Yes. I always think we should have that applause noise, like when I make the announcement like that. Jenna, you are not really that new a member on the team, but new on the podcast. You are one of our field coach specialists, one of our advisors. And I am really stoked to have you. We're going to talk about all about franchise company conferences, which you've planned your fair share, which is awesome. So I thought I would maybe, before we do our icebreaker, which Jenna said she's a little nervous about because I did not tell her what it is ahead of time. Before we do that, maybe just give people a brief background in your experience in franchising, how you came and found the AC team, just so people know where you're coming from when you offer some advice later on the show.
Sure, thanks, Belle. So I've been in franchise operations for essentially my entire career. I've worked for all kinds of franchisors, both large and small, old and new, emerging brands and established brands that have 5,500 plus locations. So it's been about 16 years now in all kinds of industries, and I just love it. I think franchising is such a fun industry to be in, to be a part of. And when I left my last place of employment, I was looking for an opportunity to really be able to help other franchise brands and field coaches. I feel like there's such a need for field coach knowledge and professional development. And so that's how I found the AC Inc. team. And I'm so excited to be here.
Yay. Well, we adore you. Jenna's energy is insane. She makes me laugh more than maybe anyone else on team calls, I have to say.
Just with my crazy faces primarily, right? I just make faces all the time.
The reaction faces are definitely there. If you guys aren't, you should go watch on YouTube just to see Jenna's face as she reacts to things that I say. No, but you also have such cool, crazy, fun facts. Like you have been on a bunch of trivia shows, which yes. I find just such a random, and you were like sharing even clips of like when you've been on these shows. I'm like, she wasn't kidding. She's been on a lot.
I know everybody's like, when's the next game show? I'm like, I've been on 3. I think that's enough. But yeah.
So funny. No, I think it's so great. Okay, let's get into the icebreaker. So this one, the icebreaker is, if you were to be sponsored by a company, what company would it be and why? So maybe something you use a lot, something you love talking about, a brand.
Oh goodness, that is a tough one.
I think mine would be Kindle. I'd want a sponsorship from Kindle because I am the biggest fan of Kindle. I read constantly. And I think it would be so fun to get an endorsement or sponsorship because then I could probably get some like free Kindle books, maybe get an upgrade.
I just got a Kindle Scribe for Christmas, actually. That was, so.
That is so fun. Are you also a big reader?
Yes, and it's funny, my significant other also gave me a bunch of fiction books. I usually read a lot of nonfiction, like I'm all about the self-help and the personal development. But he gave me, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Cormoran Strike series. They're mystery books. It was written by J.K. Rowling, but under a pen name. So it's Robert Galbraith. So I think there's 8 books in the series. And then since Christmas, I've already read 7 of them, which is crazy. Like I've just been like nonstop, just turning pages.
Oh my God. That's crazy.
I know. So yes, I'm a voracious reader, definitely.
Amazing. I am also an avid, very, very fast reader, but 7 books since Christmas is a lot though.
I know. It's funny. He keeps making fun of me. He's like, you don't put those down, do you? I'm like, no, I need to keep reading. I need to find out what happens,
I'm also a huge mystery fan. Let's chat offline. I feel like we could.
Yeah, absolutely. But let's see. Okay, a brand that I'd say maybe Apple. I'm a big Apple fan. I'm not a Mac user, but I've been on iPhone since the very beginning, and I love iPhones. So I got iPhone, iPad, AirPods, all of those. But I take it back to when I was a child, and my dad had Apple computers. Like my dad was like, Apple's the way of the future, and if I would have listened to him in the 80s, I would be rich by now. So
good lesson in there. I think.
I know. That's right. But yeah, no Mac computer though. I should get one, but I just haven't made the transition yet.
That's so funny that you're like immediately big Apple fan, not a Mac user. It's like number one thing.
Close though.
That's really funny. That's a great one. Also, if you were sponsored by them, you could get some free stuff, like maybe a new Mac.
Then I could get a Mac. That's right. There you go. So Apple, if you're listening. I'm
Smart.
your girl.
Also, that's a lot more expensive than Kindle. I feel like I should have been thinking more along those lines. Want to be
Yeah, like Jaguar or like BMW or something,
yeah,
right?
totally. How do I get something really cool and big out of this? That's awesome. Okay, great answer. Now we're going to be talking about franchise company conferences. So when I was talking to Jenna about what would be a really good topic to to talk about on the podcast, she was talking about you were talking about all your background in like planning conferences. Obviously, you're very passionate about like the franchisee coaching and support. That's why obviously we ended up finding each other with the field coaching. And I think a lot of people struggle on the company conferences with a lot of like very common pain points being, it's easy to present like education at a conference. It's easy to present like hype and excitement, right? But taking a lot of that energy, a lot of that motivation, a lot of that education back into a business as a franchisee. And then also as the home office team, there's all these other things you're wanting to work on, like maybe bringing in your supplier partners and kind of creating collaboration there, or maybe you're really trying to work on a key pain point that a lot of your franchisees are struggling with. You want to encourage attendance, you want it to be fun. And so there's all these layers of things. And when done properly, these events can be so impactful. And even if not, done to the optimal capacity, like they still can be so great, but we're always looking for how to make them a little bit more valuable, a little bit more exciting and interactive and all these things. So let's kick off with what is your background in the planning of these, in the kind of conceptualizing and really trying to keep the franchisee at the forefront of obviously the planning process. Where are you kind of coming from, or what's your past experience with it?
Sure. I mean, for many years, I was a participant of the franchisee conferences, as well as, maybe responsible for a breakout session or a few sessions. And so putting together the content for that. But then more recently, I actually became the conference planner. So I've been in charge of planning the entire event, which was a far bigger project than just attending, as I'm sure you can imagine. But it also kind of opened my eyes to all of the different opportunities and the ways you can do it. I mean, like it's not, it can be plug and play, but there's so many things you can do to make it sure that it's a well-attended and a valuable use of everybody's time. And so I think that franchisee conferences are the best part of franchising. I worked for a brand where we were thinking, like, this is a lot of work. Let's just go to every other year. In the year that we skipped, we were like, oh my gosh, this is bad. We need to bring back the conferences every year because it's so motivating and energizing. And if it's done right, your franchisees come back and they're ready to just like kick butt in their business. And so I think it's just a valuable use of time from the franchisor perspective. And it's so important that you get your franchisees involved and that you get them excited and that they all are amped to come every single year.
Yeah, the getting franchisees involved is something really cool. I on one of the AC roundtables, even just a few weeks ago, we were talking about how much more we're seeing people getting all different parts of their system involved in the planning of these. So like franchisee feedback, but then like marketing team feedback, operations team feedback. So things that all these different members of the franchise, supplier partners, right, having their thoughts on like, how could we bring the most value, right? All these different partnerships that of course make up the system, getting all of them to be a part of such an event like that is it's really cool. Seeing people really take that part a lot more seriously has been really neat, just as kind of a viewer, obviously, of the roundtables and stuff. Let's start off with mistakes. Let's start with you've planned a full conference, you've been an attendee in terms of presenting content and all of that part as well. What would you say is one thing to definitely avoid if you are planning a conference in the next year or so?
I think the biggest thing is trying to pack too much content into the few days that you have for your conference. I think
go that way. That's cool.
Yeah. I mean, I think I see like a lot of people trying to jam pack the agenda because they feel like if it's an empty agenda, then it's not a valuable use of everyone's time. But franchisees usually want to network with each other. They want to have the time to kind of talk to each other and digest the information. And so, when you have a back-to-back agenda, it's one, you're always going to be running late, which is always a challenge too, just people trying to move from, conference room to conference room. But two, you don't have those opportunities for those chats, that are in between the spaces where you have content filled in. So I'd say the other thing is everybody always has breakout sessions and they'll run them maybe, 3 rooms, 3 different times, and they'll have 9 different topics. And everybody's complaint is always, I wish I could have gone to all of the sessions, you know? So my favorite thing to do is to just have the same 3 topics and we run them 3 times. And so everybody can go to the same, you know, each session and they don't feel like they've missed something. So, I mean, I would say pare back your content if anything, instead of trying to do more.
I love that. Do you think that there's a concern for people who have had conferences in the past, though, that have like packed all the, like every time possible, like every slot with different sessions and opportunities and topics and all these things? Do you think that there would be a fear that if that got pared back quite a lot, the conference wouldn't seem as valuable or like as filled with what franchisees want to be going and learning about or taking in? Or do you think, is there a way to outline an agenda to still make sure it's clear that there's like value in all of these, you know, chunks of time, even if there's not session after session after session all in a row?
Yes.
Like, is there ways to kind of build that out and communicate with franchisees or get feedback from franchisees on it and then say, okay, we've listened, here's what we're gonna do? Like, what would be a way to make sure it doesn't feel like this conference had less than what the
Yeah,
other
sure.
had?
Well, I certainly am a big believer in surveying your franchisees and kind of listening to what they are telling you as far as what content would you like to hear. A lot of times I think, you know, home office, this is what we would like to tell them, but it may not necessarily be what they want to hear, you know. And I think the other piece too is, you know, there may be topics that they want to discuss or learn more about, but that can be done in a roundtable setting or it can be done in another way. You don't need to have an actual content session full of that. And so I think a lot of times, you know, the sessions are built around what home office is wanting to push as their agenda. And so listening to what the franchisees are actually wanting and trying to build content off of that from the beginning is a great way to do that, to make sure that they get the value that they are looking for.
Totally. And I like the thinking about how a certain topic, especially if franchisees are actively wanting to, like even in a survey saying like, what would you want a keynote on, or what would you want a session on versus what would you want a roundtable on? What would you want to hear from
Right.
your peers about? You could kind of ask that in different ways to really start getting like, what do they want to be talking to other people about versus what are they wanting like more skills and training on that might be more valuable in that type of session. But yeah, loving the surveying on the content and topic and the adjusting the style of session or the style of that time, because it doesn't all have to be the exact same. And often, as you said, franchisees get the most excited about interacting with their peers, interacting with members of the team. Like that is often most appealing when they're looking at session stuff as well.
And the other piece too, I'll say too, is when you're doing breakouts, you have to involve your franchisees. And so if you have a franchisee who's a rock star in a certain area, you know, that might help you decide that, okay, let's do a breakout session with them specifically so they can get up and be the subject matter expert. But I would also encourage you to think of outside the box as far as the franchisees that you have up on stage or that you have presenting, because I think there's a lot of burnout too, where you have your top performers and everyone's like, yeah, he's awesome, we've heard it, you know.
Yeah.
And so really it's kind of taking the opportunity to shine a light on some other franchisees that are doing well in other areas might be an opportunity too to find some content for your conference.
Or even like, I wonder, I mean, I've never planned a conference. I don't know if this would work, but I wonder if it would be really cool. Have you ever heard of those F up nights? Those,
No.
they're like events that you can buy tickets to, and they tour around. It's like a company that puts it on, and then they have local business owners or like local business leaders or just leaders in the community or whatever, and they pick, I think it's like 3 every night they do it. And they go up and they share their biggest F up or their biggest like lesson they've learned through their journey. So instead of people going on stage and talking all about how awesome this thing is that they did or how they did this really cool thing, they talk about sometimes like the hardest time in their business and how they had to work through that. And it really like, it's supposed to create this idea that we all need to relate to each other in all these different ways. And oftentimes the biggest lessons come from the biggest hardships. It's a really cool thing. Obviously, you wouldn't want to take that exact structure. Then it's like everyone's sharing all the things that they struggle with. That's not also that helpful, but cool to kind of point out even like big improvements someone has made in a certain area.
Yes. Well, I love that. Yes. I always do like a rising star award too, where it's just like somebody that like came, like that was struggling, that made massive improvements. But yes. And if you have stories like that, by all means, you know, get them up on a stage and have them tell that story if they're comfortable with doing so, because that is the most valuable stuff that you can get out of the conference, is showing, you know, I was struggling to get out of it. It's so impactful for franchisees. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it just creates more of that true collaborative, like we're all in this together type feeling versus, as you said, hearing
Like,
the same, you know, for top performing Z is about what they're doing that's right and good in their business. You're like, okay, I have heard this and I am kind of working on it, but that's not going to be the most valuable if it's done like that every year. Okay, I already have so many key takeaways from the episode: the not doing the same thing every year, the surveying Z's on the different types of content and topics. Paring back the content is, I think, so huge, and allowing there to be time for just casual conversation and networking. There's so many others, but I want to push forward and get a few more like tangible key takeaways on the what does make sense. What are some things that you have done with the planning of the conferences or seen in even like businesses you're working with now, where you're going, oh, that is something that's really going to work in this conference, or that's really going to help with the accountability or the action steps. And so what are a couple other things that someone could try to implement into their upcoming conference?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I think is a must have for all conferences is set aside maybe an hour and a half at the very end for a debrief slash action planning session. So it's kind of like a open forum, but it'll be facilitated, but okay, what did you take away from your time here? And what are you going to implement in your business? And give them a worksheet or give them a piece of paper to really write down their thoughts. Because otherwise, they have conversations, they take notes, and then it's in one ear and out the other. And then having the field support team kind of going around the tables and helping to make sure that they're actually doing the activity, that they're getting value out of it, and then collecting them or having them send them to their FBCs afterwards so they can follow up with that on their next call. It has been so beneficial. All franchisees that when we've done this, the franchisees have been like, that was the most valuable thing to me, because I was actually able to take a moment to stop and think about what I wanted to do in my business once I got back home. So that was something that I would highly recommend setting aside time for, and making sure that you actually are having people, walk around and making sure that it's getting done. Because, a lot of times you'll have people check out because it's Vegas or wherever and they want to. But, I think that having the time to do that, and then, it's also a good thing to kind of close your conference with too, because it's like, okay, let's think about all of the things we've discussed and let's just put together a plan.
Yeah, I love that. I also think that the not having a franchisee just leave with the sheet and have it just be the thing that they have.
The
But
accountability piece is huge.
collecting
Yes.
them, yeah, or having them send them immediately to their field coach or FBC is so cool, because it does create that sense of accountability and reality. I think so often when you are given a worksheet in any type of educational training, situation, it can be so easy. And I mean, we are all guilty of this.
You're like, I'm
Write it
going
down.
to finish
You're like, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, totally. Learned all this. Here's the thing that I'm in. So easy to do that, and then just have that be a piece of paper that gets lost in your bag as you're on your way back and you never look at it again. But instead having it be something like, I'm going to fill this in, and then I have to give it to someone who's going to be asking me about it. We're creating a plan for it. We're like, I really like the having there be that type of accountability with a sheet like that, because I feel like it kind of reminds me of like school or whatever. You like fill in a little worksheet thing. You're like, is this actually something I'm going to go hang up in my business or not?
top three things, and this is what I want it to be done by, right? Or something like that. So it's not like, what do you want to do in all of these areas where it makes their brains explode? Keep it simple. And that way on their next call, the field coach can be like, okay, so at conference, you said you wanted to work on this. How's that going? And then they're able to actually start that conversation moving forward with that, which is so helpful.
Totally, totally. And one thing that we've added to worksheets in the past, by the way, too, we've done this at different conferences that AC has put on as well, like the worksheet session at the end where everyone goes around the table in these small breakout groups and like talks about the thing that they're going to be implementing or problem solves it with people at their table. And reflects on everything they've learned over the past days or whatever. But in those sessions, I often find when we've done them that people almost are like wishing that it was more of a full day, like more of like, oh, I wish I had even more time. So I know an hour and a half was mentioned, which would be great. But I know that our feedback has also been like, because it was one of the most valuable parts of the whole, event, that they almost wished it was like the whole final afternoon was like problem solving issues that have come up, using information that they've learned through the event, and then getting the time to actually map it out and talk it through, and each person's problem at the table, whether that's 4 people or 3 people or whatever. So needing more time for that, I've definitely heard as a big feedback when you have that type of sheet and that type of time to really work through things. But on the worksheets, one thing we added, which I think people really like, especially franchisees, because like running a local business as a franchisee is so much of your time and energy. So to be like, I have to go do more things can be
Yeah.
so overwhelming. But we have a section we added in where it's who who needs to do this. So we talk about
Yeah.
how often it's delegating or empowering someone else to take on a task or help with a project, or well, I don't even really have the skill set for this. We're going to need to bring in someone to help with this, whether that's the field coach to help with some strategy steps or things like that. But so delegating to someone on their team or empowering or bringing on like a contractor. So there's all these different options, but to have that be a section in the worksheet, we found is a lot better because it is very overwhelming to be like, I need to, update our LinkedIn presence or something, whatever the step is. They're like, I don't really know how to do that. I'm not sure if I'm really gonna have the time to do that. But if there's a section saying like who needs to do this, it can be really helpful and actually lead to more of that action step being taken as well.
I will also say too that I think it's incredibly valuable when a franchisee brings their manager or director or whatever to conference with them. I know it's an additional expense, but if they are able to bring them, then they can game plan together, and they can kind of divvy up the tasks or the responsibilities, and it's so much more of a valuable exercise, that ending, action planning when their manager is on hand too. But not only that, like it's just such a good raw, good feeling for the manager to come to conference and to actually like understand that they're part of something bigger. It's just so valuable for the managers too. So if that's a possibility, I highly recommend, inviting managers to attend with their franchisees.
Yeah, I have heard a lot of people say that when they have done that, it's been such a game changer for the implementation side, like the actually going
Right.
back and doing it. We actually ended up talking a lot more about the accountability side kind of throughout this episode so far. So I was going to end off with the accountability, but we've actually covered a lot of that, which is awesome. What I did want to ask though, slightly a different way to finish up today is talking about we've got the accountability, we've got the okay content we need to be serving, we need to be bringing in the franchisees for the feedback, all of that. What about the fun, or what about the like attraction of coming to the event as far as just connecting with fellow owners and encouraging attendance, making sure like it's also a fun event? Because I've again talking at roundtables and stuff with different members of our community, I definitely hear that some people try to make it like extremely fun. Like there's scavenger hunts and dance it. Like there's just all sorts of activities and like fun that's added in, that's planned. There's like specific times that we're doing all these different things. And I think for some systems, owners love it. They love that there's like a plan in place. They love that it's always going to be different and there's going to be an activity. And then I think sometimes the feedback is that people really like just having more just time, like just time to chat and just not an activity. They don't have to be running around interacting in a like an activity style way. But instead really love just time to be hanging out, whether that's at a pub that you've booked or whatever that looks like, but just having like space and time, even if it's just around some yard games or on a, I've seen people do like outdoor hikes and everyone gets into groups and does like, there's so many ways you can do it. But I'm curious on the fun side, are you kind of team like have some planned activities? Are you team like create a lot of free space so that people can kind of do what they would like? What do you think is kind of a good balance, or what have you seen work well for that?
I kind of like a mixture of both. I mean, I definitely am all about the fun. I think it's important when you are doing like a group mixer, kind of, like a happy hour or whatnot, that you force some interaction through a game or through some kind of activity, because otherwise people will stick with those who they know. And if they don't know anyone, they'll just be kind of off in the corner, not having fun at all. Right. So, I mean, I've done, the traditional, being like characteristic bingo game, or something like that. Or, you could do something but encouraging people to kind of mill about and to have some kind of a goal in mind, I think is very beneficial, especially for those opening mixers. I also sometimes like to assign a member of the home office team to the new franchisees to do some introductions, right? So if it's their first time attending, having them have a buddy. Of it, like we have one home office employee that has a group of them, and they introduce them to other more established franchisees to kind of just break the ice, because I think that is so important. As far as like activities go, I think I mean, it depends honestly on your group of franchisees and what they are expecting or what they are really looking for. I think they'll find their own fun if you don't need to necessarily provide it for them. But I am a big fan of like I think this goes back to my game show thing, but we did like a family feud, on stage
Yeah.
where it's like all brand specific questions. That was a ton of fun. So I do think that there needs to be some fun and engagement outside of just like learning. But I don't think you need to go overkill. I don't think we need to take people to Disney World or anything. I've heard that happening at franchise conferences, and that just gets expensive. And I think franchisees in general will bulk at the expense of conference, and that might preclude them from coming. And so you want to keep it affordable, but still fun, but try to keep that in mind when you're planning events and activities and those kinds of things.
Totally. One thing that I'll just add on the fun note, because I'm fully agree on any event or conference style thing I've ever been to. It's great when there is an encouragement of interaction. That's kind of how I like to think of it, because that way it does keep it usually on the more affordable side. It's just encouraging interaction. So is there fun ways we can be encouraging that people have to go up and talk to someone they don't know yet or haven't chatted with in a while or whatever? Like the more we can encourage that, the better. But people are adults and they can find, they can create their own fun and be responsible for also entertaining themselves if there's, a gap in between something and dinner or whatever. But one thing that I thought was cool, again, we were talking about this on a round table a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about kind of almost looking at it as like planning a wedding. Like a welcome dinner, like all those types of things. It's all the same.
It feels like that. It really does.
Yeah. You're encouraging people to like go say hi to people they don't know and stuff. And I just planned my wedding last year, and we did a couple really fun things. One was we had name tags, but the name tag was not your name. It was like something about you. So it was instead of having people go over and be like, oh, hi, your name's whatever. Instead, it was kind of an immediate way to break the ice. So some people, we did it like how you knew the bride and groom was the one night, and that was the welcome dinner or whatever. But we also had people just put in things that were funny about themselves, like nicknames they go by, or a hobby that they really love or whatever. And I really loved how it was cute actually at the end of our welcome dinner. Everyone was like, that was great. It was such a good way to go over and be like, I immediately know something about you. I don't know your name yet, but now I can interact, and it can be kind of a funny icebreaker to open up the conversation too. So we had these like fun, really brightly colored name tags, and then people can kind of write just fun things about themselves. And then we also had to kind of partner with it, a bingo card that everyone had, and there was a prize, right? People have done bingo a lot, and I know that's a popular one, but and it was all related to like fun facts about people. So you had to kind of go interact, and the name tag sometimes helped, sometimes it didn't. And then you had to kind of find, people that were, knew the bride and groom in a certain way, or perhaps have a certain hobby that they love, or, things like that. You have to know your franchisees obviously fairly well, but it's kind of fun because some of them are like, have traveled to this many countries, or have this many pets, or whatever it was, right? Just kind of fun things to get.
No, that's really fun. I like that. Along the same lines with name tags, when you said name tags, I'm a big fan of those conference style ribbons on people's name tags, right? So you can get them for whatever you like, but so like multi-unit owner or first time attendee or, top 100 or whatever. And so you have the colored ribbons, and then people will start to see, oh, that person has the same ribbon. That's another multi-unit owner. I should go talk to them. Right. And so they don't have to get too close to see the colored ribbons, but they can identify, who's a top performer that maybe they want to speak to without having to like be introduced face to face. So that's really also very beneficial for conferences too, is to give them some ways to identify themselves. Yeah.
I like that one. Yeah, that's a good one. And then, you can, I guess, just find them, or even have it like be a part of, if you have a specific name tag structure, you can always add it as like a colored dot on it, or, there's ways you can kind of adjust.
Absolutely.
Which is cool. Oh my gosh. Well, I feel like there is so much that we unpacked.
I love conferences. Yes.
Awesome. No, that was fantastic. Is there anything else before we finish up today that you want to add in, or have we covered what you wanted to?
Another thing that I would like to mention, I cannot recommend enough the use of a conference event app. I know it's a little bit of an additional expense, and a lot of people are like, do we really need it? But like for agenda management and to be able to communicate to all of your attendees when you're on site, as well as allowing them to do some social sharing, like that has been super beneficial. They're taking pictures of each other while they're out, and sharing them to the entire system. It really kind of gets the event buzzing on a new level. And so I've obviously did it old school style, where we printed out everything and brought it to the event. The other thing is you can have your resources uploaded right into the app. I mean, it's a no-brainer for me, and I don't think I would do a conference any other way. So I would highly recommend, you can use any app you like, but go digital. Let's get in this century for a little while, you know.
I love it. That's actually a really great final tip because yeah, if people are kind of on the fence or they've been considering it, or maybe they used it a while ago, but the apps weren't as, up to date now and easy to use as they are now. So I think that's a really, really helpful tip as someone who, just planned one more recently.
Yes. Yes.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Jenna. That was
Yeah.
so good, so fun. Loved having you on. We'll definitely do it again soon. And for everyone listening, thank you so much. Please go rate and subscribe if you haven't. We love sharing these episodes with you, and have a great week. Go be awesome.